Welcome to Born or Made, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of success and identity. Are the traits that define us as leaders ingrained from birth, or are they carved out throughout our experiences? Join your host, Anne-Marie LaTulip, as we ask these questions to some of the most insightful and inspiring entrepreneurs of our time. Each episode, we explore their journeys, the decisions that shaped them, and how they've molded their own paths to success. So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply curious about the interplay between nature and nurture in professional growth, you're in the right place. Get ready for compelling stories, transformative insights, and a new perspective on what it really takes to make it in the world of entrepreneurship.
Welcome back to the Born or Made podcast. I'm your host, Anne-Marie LaTulip, and with me today, I have the wonderful Kim Julen. Kim is an energy flow expert whose Feng Shui expertise, intuitive skills, and extensive personal development and business knowledge create a unique approach to resolving your business and life issues. Kim is a certified Feng Shui practitioner, International Feng Shui Guild board member, that's a tongue twister, and red ribbon practitioner and certified angel card reader. Kim has a business degree from St. Thomas University and has trained with world leaders in business, spirituality, and personal development. Kim, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. You have a fun fact included in your bio, but I'm going to let you tell us all about that. So
Sure.
I told everybody a little bit about you, but I'd love to hear more because you're doing some really, really cool things. So I'd love to learn how you got to be where you're at now and how you started this journey.
Sure. Yeah. So my fun fact, which I'll share with everyone, is that in May of 2017, I moved from Minnesota, where I was born and raised, lived all my life, to Maui, sight unseen. So I'd never been there, didn't know anybody, moved by myself, basically sold everything, sold my house, my car, most of my possessions, and moved to this island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
So yeah, it's
by yourself. I didn't realize it was by yourself.
Yeah, I did. I had two boys. I have two boys who are now 27 and 30, and they were off on their own essentially at that time. And but they were still in Minnesota, and all my family was there, and I was not partnered at the time. I actually met my partner in Maui. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, and it's really a lesson in following the flow, a lesson in having faith and trusting that everything is working out for you. And, trusting, like what I like to say is intuitive guidance by your spiritual team, your angels and your guides, and they will never steer you wrong.
So you felt, am I correct in saying that you just felt this pull to move to Maui? What was it about Maui that made you make that huge decision?
Yeah. So what happened first is I realized I was meant to move. So I got the energy in Minnesota for me felt really heavy. I felt really stuck. I didn't seem to be able to move forward. And I just kept getting this feeling or this nudge that I was meant to move. And then I was trying to figure out where because, I really had open. I did want to move somewhere warm. I don't like winter. So that was a bonus for me to be able to move. And I was looking at California. I had an astrocartology done, which is your astrology for places. And one of the places that they said was Seattle. I'm like, no, it's too rainy, which is sort of funny because my partner's from from Seattle and I'm actually in Washington right now.
I was just gonna say that. Aren't you there right now?
I am.
That's
so
funny.
It's a really good, apparently I have a really good line for whatever, one of those lines for clients and things on this coast. So but at the time I was like, no, I don't want to move there. Too rainy, too cold, too wet. And then I just started getting sort of things dropping in about Maui. And I had one of my guides that came in was from Maui or living on Maui. And then Wayne Dyer was a real strong influence. He wrote all his books on Maui. And there was just a number of different things. And so when that happened, I was like, okay, Maui, that's a big deal because it's like an island. I can't just fill a truck and bring this stuff
Yeah,
there.
right.
I mean, it's a whole other thing. And you're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and all of that. I had been to Hawaii. I had been to a lot of the other islands, just never Maui.
Okay.
And it had been a lot of years, but I always felt a really strong pull to Hawaii. It's one of those things like I had thought about if someone asked me where I would move when I was retired, I would have said Hawaii because that is just, I had such a strong pull towards it.
Yeah.
But the thought of doing that, sort of midstream never occurred to me to be able to do that. So I did, sort of a little bit of a longer story shorter. I asked my guides for a sign and I got it really clear sign that I was meant to move to Maui. And then it really was just about leaning in and just starting to take actions. Because if I had known or thought about like all the things that had to happen in order for me to get there, because it only took me 5 months. When the guidance came in, the confirmation came in, I was there 5 months later.
Wow.
And yeah, so really fast. And it was one of those things where I just had to do one thing at a time and sort of like, call my realtor, see what I could get for my house. And then little did I know my
Yeah.
house would be up on the market, not too long after that. So it just one of those things where I just kept leaning in and following the flow of it.
That is so awesome. Can you tell us what the sign was?
Yeah, of course. So I was doing a Secret Santa sister exchange at the time, which is just where you would get random gifts. So friends of my friends, there was sort of a chain kind of thing. And they would send me gifts. I would send one gift to somebody else. And anyway, I was getting these gifts. And it was around Christmas time, December of 2016. And I got a package and brought it into the kitchen, opened it up, and I can't even remember what the gifts were now, but then I was looking at the couple little bags I had pulled out, and there was one that was like a turquoise blue, which is one of my favorite colors. And it said Maui Divers Jewelry on it. I still have the bag. And
Wow.
that was the clear sign that I needed, just super clear. So once I got that, I was like, okay, I'm meant to move there. Let's go.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay,
Yeah.
so before this, or before you decided to move, I should say, what kind of work were you doing in Minnesota?
So same work that I'm doing now. And essentially what I do is feng shui consulting for
Right?
homes and businesses. And then I also am an angel connector, I like to say. So I am able to relay information from your angels and guides, for instance, on any topic, any questions, anything that comes up for you. I can also connect with people that have passed over, whether that's animals or pets. So I can relay messages from them as well. And so
Wow.
most of this work I do remotely. I do still do some feng shui in person for people on Maui. And then also when I visit Minnesota or other places, I will do it in person. But otherwise, pretty much everything else is remote.
Wow. That's interesting. Both of those things are fascinating. Or actually, there were three things you said. So fascinating. I want to dive in
Yeah.
to um, both being able to pass messages on from loved ones that have passed, but also guides and angels. I would love to know how early did you discover that you had that talent, and what sort of were the first signs, I guess, or the first messages that you received? How did you know what you were hearing, I guess?
Yeah. So for me, there was a break. So when I was young, I have one very distinct memory of seeing these huge angels on the altar at church. I was raised Catholic and we would go to church often.
Yes.
And remember seeing these angels on the altar at church and talking to them or communicating with them, but without words. So it was basically just, I was hearing what they were saying, I was talking to them, and I was see them or was communicating with them. So I have that one distinct memory. I also have a lot of memories growing up of people being in my room at night. So this was before I knew how to protect myself, if you will. And so I'd wake up and there'd literally be like a spirit standing over my bed.
Oh my goodness.
And so talk about nightmares, I'd run into my parents' room and they'd be like, oh, enough of this already. It's just stay in your room.
You
And
must
it's
have
like,
been so scared.
oh gosh, it was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And just that, that sense of like someone being over you or around you, that type of thing. So I have a lot of memories of that when I was younger. And then as happens as you get older and people don't believe you that you're seeing angels, they don't believe you that you're seeing spirits, right? You do get into a place of blocking that, right? And so that's what happened for me for many, many years. I still loved angels. In fact, my mom was really, she loved angels too. She had little angel figurines all over the house, right? And we never talked about at that time while she was living, we never talked about whether she saw anything or had any gifts related to that. I don't know, but she definitely had an affinity to angels. And
Oh, wow.
I continued with that connection with angels, but I didn't, I wasn't doing anything. And I definitely wasn't trying to connect with any spirits because I just, I wanted to
Yeah.
cut that off. I didn't want that. I didn't want that experience. It
Well,
was
can I ask you a question
difficult.
about that real quick?
Yeah.
Um, were they coming to you everywhere you were? I mean, was it just a constant thing or was it only at
No, it
night
was
or
mostly at night. It
okay.
was mostly at night for me, with that. I had other experiences as I opened up to my gifts or reopened to my gifts, I will say, that came, that came up. So I'll share one of these experiences and then I'll go back to how I reopened to the gifts kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah.
So one time I was in St. Paul. So St. Paul is an older city. That's where I grew up, with St. Paul. And they
Yep.
have a thing called Art Crawl. And so they have these artist lofts and they open their lofts for people to come in and, peruse their art, buy their art, that type of
Yeah.
thing. And
Okay.
I was with a couple friends in a very old building and we had been in a couple different lofts and no problem. We go into this one loft in the corner and the woman artist had they have these huge windows, which normally artists love the light, right?
Yeah,
To light up
yeah.
their paintings, huge windows, but she had black curtains on every window. So it was like super dark in there. And then her paintings were like, it almost looked like she had thrown blood on them. They were just like horrible.
Oh.
And the minute I walked in there, I was like, I felt sick, like literally sick. And I'm like, and my friend looked at me and she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I need to get out of here.
Oh
And
my
so
God.
I went out in the hall and I had to sit down right away. I called on, because by that time I knew what to do. So I called on my angels, called on Archangel Azrael in particular, because I felt spirits in the place. I felt spirits had taken over her energy actually and
Like
influenced her art, right?
bad spirits, like
Yeah.
negative.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so what I did is I first asked Archangel Michael and Archangel Azrael to clear me of this because I was like feeling it so intensely. And then I also asked them to help clear the energy in that space, right? Or to escort those spirits where they belong, because they didn't belong there, right? And
Yeah.
so I did. Within a couple minutes, I felt good enough to get up and get out. And I didn't know that woman or anything, so I didn't ever follow up and see what happened with that. But
Right.
that was, one
Wow.
experience of feeling, kind of feeling things. And I do, even when I'm doing a remote, so I do space clearings as well. And when I do them remotely, and I can feel like energy in a space also, even remotely, when I'm
Even
looking at the floor plan.
remotely.
and I can feel like, oh, where there's stuck energy or where there's something. And even weirdly, I had a space clearing that I did just the other day, and I I felt something that needed to be released in this woman's utility room or storage closet. And I'm like, there's something in this corner. What are you storing in this corner that needs to be let go of? And it turned out to be old client files, interestingly enough.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it was what came through is that she needed to release the old client files to make room for new people to come in.
Wow. That
Yeah,
is so interesting. I am so fascinated by all of this, but especially you just mentioned that you called to the archangels. Can you talk about that for a minute? Because
sure.
I'd love for people that are listening may have this question too, but talk about the difference, your difference between talking to your guide and angel and then the archangel. Like, what's the archangel? Is that, yeah, I don't know. Just
Yeah.
explain that a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah. So here's the thing for everyone to know is we all have a spiritual team of angels and guides. Every single person, even tiny little babies, have a team that is there helping them. 24/7, they're always available and they're always helping.
That's
And you
refreshing to know.
Yes, right? And you can always call on them.
Yeah.
There's no limit to what they can help you with. So that's the first thing. And the angels and guides, your spiritual team is made up of guides. So sometimes these are ascended masters like Jesus or Buddha or Mother Mary, or it could be a saint or an angel. They also are made up, your spiritual team can have on it loved ones that have transitioned. So,
Mhm.
like my mom and dad are both gone now, and they're both guides for me. And so my mom particularly loves to help me with parking spots. So she's she's awesome at that. Every time we need a spot, she is helping with that. And then you also have guardian angels. So these are angels that have been with you since birth that are there just for you. And so that's, guardian angels. Sometimes people just have one, sometimes you have multiples. And then the archangels really help everybody. So the archangels can be helping lots of different people at the same time. And so they do have some specialties, like Archangel Metatron is really great with organization and with time. So he's kind of our time angel. He can help with, if we're running short on time, he can create a time warp, or he can help you work with vertical time, which means, time is moving backwards and forwards. So it's not really a linear thing. And then there's other angels that help with writing, like Archangel Gabriel will help with writing. Archangel Azrael helps with spirits crossing, that type of thing. So they have kind of different specialties, and you don't actually have to know that. Like you can just say angels help, right?
Yeah.
And they will come and help you. And
How
I had actually, Archangel Michael was sent to me by a friend of mine after my mom died. I was just struggling a bit, and so she sent me Archangel Michael, and he's really been with me ever since. Just a really strong energy, and he's just someone that I call in upon a lot. He gives courage. He helps with clearing all kinds of things.
wow. How do you communicate with them? Can you see them?
Yeah, so this kind of brings me back to how I reconnected with them. So,
Oh, yeah, we
uh,
didn't I think we
yeah, I
sorry, we
never
went on a
answered that.
tangent or something. Go ahead.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did. A little meadow report, I like to call it, where we
Yeah.
just like go off in the meadow. We're going to come back.
All right. Back on
Yeah.
track. Yes, reconnect.
Back to
Tell us
that.
how.
So I think this will help understand how it happens for me, because I think it's different for everybody. So what happened for me is I had gotten kind of into going to psychics or having readings or different things like that. I was getting into more spiritual things and all of that, but I wasn't, and I was maybe playing around with cards, card decks, that type of thing. Uh, but I wasn't doing anything for anyone else. And my girlfriend and I were called to go to an event in California. It was Wayne Dyer was going to be asking questions of Esther Hicks, who channels a collective called Abraham. So a lot of people will know that as Abraham Hicks. They've written a bunch of books. They do a lot of live events, all that kind of stuff. But this was the first and the only time that the two were ever on stage together, Wayne Dyer and Esther Hicks. And so we just were like, I feel like we need to go to this. And my girlfriend actually brought it up. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So we flew from Minnesota to California for this event. We didn't have a ton of time, so we were only staying overnight. When I went to the event, there wasn't anything, earth shattering about the event. And actually, Wayne Dyer showed a lot of his humanness in his questions, which was kind of interesting. But the energy in the space was such that I could barely keep my eyes open. And that's what happens when you get in contact with vibrations that are a lot higher than you. It's difficult for you to stay sort of conscious, right?
Really?
And so, yeah, that's something I didn't know that at the time, but it's something that I've learned, as I've gone along. But I was feeling fine before we walked into that room. And then when they came in, it was like I needed toothpicks to keep my eyes open. I just was like, it was so strong. So that happened. And then the next day we stayed overnight. And then the next morning, my girlfriend was still sleeping, and I grabbed my journal and some pens and went out on the little, I want to call it a lanai because that's what we call them in Hawaii, but it was like a little patio or deck or whatever. And I went out there and sat down, and the sun was just rising. So it was very early morning, and a beautiful, balmy day. I was like, felt so good to me being from Minnesota. I was like, oh, this is awesome. But what happened for me is I could suddenly hear a voice in my right ear. And it was telling me, oh, you're going to be channeling, this is time, it's time now. And it was like they were just right next to me. And I'm like looking around like, what's going on? Right?
Was it a male voice?
It was a female voice. So the team, my spiritual team has she likes to call herself a spokesperson. She's not a leader, but she's a spokesperson, and her name is Christine. And so it was Christine that was talking to me and telling me that I was going to do this, and I'm sobbing. I instantly started sobbing. I'm like, no, find somebody else. I can't do this. I'm not ready. And they're like, yeah, you are. And you can hear us clearly now. And I'm like, yeah, I can hear you. And so they came in, and when my girlfriend woke up, I told her, thankfully she didn't think I was crazy, because it's like, I'm hearing voices, right? But, and so I like to lovingly say they haven't shut up since. So I mainly hear them. I do also, when I'm doing readings, I get visions or pictures of things. So sometimes I'll get just a picture of something I need to share, or colors come in sometimes to represent the angels. I don't actually see the angels like I did when I was little, but I have a very clear sense of them. Archangel Michael, for example, when he comes in, he brings a lot of like heat energy. And so I always know when he's there, especially when I do some angel message circles with a group. I have a membership, and that happened yesterday. I had that session yesterday with them, and Michael didn't come in at the very beginning, but when this one gal, when I started doing her question, I was like so strong. I'm like, okay, I got to take my sweater off. It's like hot in here, and everyone else was like feeling the same thing. People were taking their sweaters off, and because it's just, you feel that heat. So some of them have like kind of a signature thing like that, and other ones I just recognize by the color, or I'll just in my mind hear their name. Like they'll tell me, this is this angel. And then sometimes they'll come up just in the cards, right? So when I'm drawing cards, some of the cards have angel, archangels on them.
That is amazing. It's so fascinating. How many archangels are there?
There are probably a lot more than I'm aware of,
Okay.
because I'm learning about new ones all the time. In fact, I have a cute story about one of these, but there's 15 main
Okay.
archangels. Yeah. So those would be the ones that people have heard of more often, know about more often, like, Archangel Michael and Raphael. Raphael is the healing angel, so most people have heard of him. Michael is an angel that many, many people have heard of. And so there's a lot of Archangel Haniel is another angel that is often heard of. Archangel Jophiel is the feng shui angel. So
Oh,
angel
no
of
kidding.
beauty. Yeah, so they have kind of their different little specialties, but honestly, they can help you with anything.
That is like all of this, it just feels very comforting to me. It's very, very cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
couple more questions I have. I don't know if you can remember enough to describe what they looked like when you saw them when you were little. Do you remember that clearly?
Yeah, yeah. So they were huge. So our church, the church that I went to when I was young, had a very like tall center, and I would say it was maybe, gosh, if I had to think, maybe, mm, gosh, I don't even know. I'm trying to think, like maybe 100 feet or something like that.
Yeah.
So they were the height of the building, is what I remember seeing. And I do remember seeing like colors around them, and not like a distinct shape, but very much like uh I could tell that it was an angel. I could see the wings, and I could see color around them. There were three of them at that time, in that particular memory that I have, and just felt so safe, and I felt so protected and calm and comfortable, even though they were just massively huge on the altar. To me, I wasn't scared at all. Like, it was like a friend.
Wow. That's so cool. So, what would you say to somebody that maybe wants to try to communicate with their guides or angels? Do you think that that is something that somebody could teach themselves to do, or do you think it's just specifically a gift given?
No, anyone can do it. And it is, there are specific things. So I have a women's coaching group, and I actually walk them through, I have a course that they take that walks them through how to connect with their angels and guides. I do a lot of feng shui stuff in that as well.
Yeah.
But there's a number of things that have to happen in order for you to be able to connect. And one of those is to be clear, because oftentimes we are taking on energy from other people. We're taking on emotions from other people, and it's really hard to open yourself to be able to hear your angels and guides if you've got like all the static,
Mm,
right, in your energy field. It can also, static can come from your environment. It can come from the thoughts that you have, the things that you're watching on TV. Like, there's
yeah.
a lot of different ways that we get sort of this static buildup, which makes it more difficult to connect. And it's also important that you have sort of a practice of the way that you connect, like clearing yourself, getting calm. A lot of times people will meditate before they try to connect with their angels and guides, and just getting quiet and calm is really, really helpful. And then there's just, the normal stuff, like having a question, ask them for
Yeah.
help. Really, just, you can ask them for help with anything. There's lots of little things that, like traffic is one of them that I always, when I'm driving, ask thousand angels to surround us while we drive, right, to protect us and keep us safe. And I did that when my son was learning to drive, and I would send angels with him when he was going off on his own, but then also, of course, when I was driving with him. And the one time I kind of forgot, and he's like, "What's the deal? Why is there so much traffic so close to me? That never happens." I
That's
said,
funny.
"Well, I forgot." forgot to have the angels come and give you a buffer, because
My
normally when he was driving, he would not have cars right around
that's
him.
funny. My mom used to say the same thing. Whenever I would leave, she would pray, keep the angels around you, or I forget exactly how
Yes.
she said it, but yeah, she used to say the
Yeah.
same thing. That's
Yeah,
so cool.
exactly.
So
So, and they can really help with anything, like I said. And you don't need to know which angel. You can just say, "Angels, please help." You don't even need to know what exactly you want them to help you with. You can just
that's
ask them to
awesome.
help.
So they
So,
can always hear you. We
yes.
just can't hear them. Most of us
Yeah.
can't hear them. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and sometimes they communicate in a lot of different ways. They'll send messages, they'll send, signs. I like to say signs, symbols, and synchronicities. So, the signs are sometimes things that we can see physically, like you might see a peace sign, or you might see a heart, right? Which is something that we all know is a connection to love or to peace, that type of thing. But then there's also other signs and symbols that they might send. So loved ones, for example, often send coins, dimes and pennies. So my mom always sends dimes. She has since she transitioned, and it's kind of fascinating to see where they show up, because my sister and I were, after she had died, we had gone to Dominican Republic, and we were walking on the sand beach, and there's nothing, like they don't have shells or anything on this particular beach. And my sister looked down, she's like, "What is that?" And she picked it up, and it was a Dominican dime. Just in the middle of the sand. We had a family reunion, and my cousin was finding dimes. She didn't know anything about this story at all, and she was finding out. She's like, "I found like 3 dimes." I'm like, "Oh, that's
Wow.
that's our parents there." And then even when I was dating back in Minnesota, I remember this one time going meeting this guy at a coffee shop, and I looked, he had already sat down, and I looked, and there was a dime sitting on the chair rail. And I'm like, "Oh, apparently mom's giving me the heads up on this one."
Oh, that is funny.
Yeah.
That is really funny. Let me ask you one more question about this, because I want to talk about feng shui too, but
Yeah.
this is just so fascinating to me. Where do you do you mind if I ask you, do you believe in God?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So where does God fit in with the angels? So does he sort of oversee the angels, as many people think, the angels are ruled by God, right? Is that truly how it is?
Yeah,
Or
I always think of the angels as God's messengers.
okay,
And
okay.
I think of them as our helpers, that they really want to help. They are up there for us, for people that think of it as up, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They are up there to help us and to assist us in navigating this life, because it's not easy being
No.
human.
Tell me about
It's really not, it's not for the faint of heart to do this, especially at this time in consciousness. There's just a lot of stuff. And so we never intended to do it alone. We always intended that we would have help. And the angels are, one of the groups of helpers for us, is how I think of it, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. All right, awesome. Okay, so let's switch gears. Let's talk about
Okay.
feng shui. So for anyone listening that might not be familiar with that term, can you describe what it means?
Definitely. So feng shui actually literally means wind and water, and it's about balance. We use in feng shui nature as a model for balance. So when you go into a garden, for example, there's different colors, there's different sizes of things, there's different shapes, there's scents that you might smell, there's things that you see, there's the air that you feel, all that kind of thing. It feels good when you're in a garden. Versus if you go into like the old fashioned, now they've changed things a little bit, but the old fashioned doctor's offices where everything was white, right?
Yes, stark.
White
Yeah.
walls everywhere,
Yeah.
the white, whatever thing you sit on or lay on, everything's white. That's very metal energy. So white represents metal energy in the feng shui elements. And it can make you feel very uncomfortable to
Mhm.
be just in one element like that. And so that is not balanced. When it's just white, that's not, that's not a balance. We do need a balance of different shapes and colors and things to help us feel calmer, right?
Okay.
And it's also, when I think of feng shui in terms of what it does, it's really about creating an environment that energetically supports you and the things that you want to draw into your life. So you can think of it kind of like a physical dream board, that your
Wow.
home or your space, your office is a place that you can use to set intentions and to draw things into yourself, to manifest things.
Okay. So that's interesting because I was thinking, and maybe this is related, or maybe this is something completely different. I thought feng shui was, the way furniture faces, or where you place certain things. Um, is
That
that the same thing? Is that
That
okay?
can be
Part of it?
part of it. Yes,
Okay.
that can definitely be part of it. So furniture is big. That's a big part of what's in our spaces. And the way furniture is arranged can sometimes block energy or open the flow to it.
Ah, okay.
So that's maybe why you've heard about, moving your furniture around, right? That's not, you don't always have to do that, but we definitely do look at furniture, particularly beds, in which direction beds are facing. That's a really important piece because we spend a third of our lives in our bedrooms, a
Right.
lot of time, and it needs to be supportive. There's a lot of things, if I'm looking at somebody's space and they just want something small to start with, I always say start with the bedroom because that's where you spend so much time. And it's also really connected to your body and to your health, which are very important. So we do
Okay.
look a lot at the beds. Like we, for instance, want a really nice solid headboard. We want that support, right?
Yeah. So would you say that feng shui can vary for different people depending on their own energy, or are there principles of feng shui that are always the same?
There are principles that are always the same. There are, I will say, different types of feng shui. So there's a classical form of feng shui, which is based on compass directions. I find that to be a little bit confusing for people, especially if they're new to feng shui. There's a lot of calculations that have to happen in order to use that type of feng shui. And then, which I do practice that also. That's kind of, I look at feng shui in layers. So I
Okay.
always start with the easiest type of thing, which is based on the feng shui bagua being at the entry point being at the front door. So it's essentially a mental map. And I do have a free gift, I think, that I shared with you that people
Yes.
can get that bagua and understand how to lay that mental map on their home. So
Great.
that's
Okay,
something
cool.
that they can do, right? And so that mental map being based on the front door is also easier in the Western culture because our homes are not situated typically on north, south, east, west axes. We have cul-de-sacs. We have, roads that curve. We have,
Yeah.
just all kinds of different things. We have a lot of, a lot of homes that are, apartments or condos, and the entrances aren't at the front of the building and things like that. So there's a lot of other stuff that goes on with that as well. So I typically will start with that basic form of more of a westernized version of feng shui that works well and people can understand. And so the principles of that are that every area of your life correlates to an area in your space. And so when you know that, if you're having difficulties in relationship, for example, you can look at that area of your home and see what's going on there. Is that where you
Oh,
keep your
wow.
stinky garbage? Is that, where the clutter closet is? What's going on in that area of your home?
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I never knew that part
Yeah.
about that. I just thought it was specifically about how you arrange your home and place things in the house and furniture and directions and stuff. So that was very I'm interested to learn more. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really cool. So I'm looking forward to that free gift, and I'll definitely put it um the link in the show notes. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
All of this stuff is just, I could talk to you about this for hours. I mean,
I know, right?
it's just so fascinating. Let me ask you, do you have anything new and exciting on the horizon? Anything coming up for you?
I do actually. So I'm in the midst of teaching some live classes. I think this probably won't come out before my last one, but these are all going to be turned into online classes as well. So that will be an option for people to, if they want to dive into, for instance, magnifying their money. I will have a course for that. I have a course for the bedroom feng shui, which is all about relationships and support and connection, all of that type of thing. So I've got that going as well. And then I have my angel message circle. So I do twice a month circles where each person gets to ask their personal question, but they also get guidance from everybody else's questions and answers. So it's really a fascinating thing how that works when you get a group together of people that are, in all different areas of the world or the country.
Yeah.
And, they're all asking their own individual questions, but you're gaining knowledge or wisdom from them. So that's a really fun thing. And then, of course, I have my Love Your Life group, which is where I teach people how to connect with their angels and guides. I teach them how to do feng shui for themselves in their homes, all of that kind of thing.
Wow, you're a busy woman.
Yes, for
Let
sure.
me ask you, do you ever you mentioned earlier that you do some in-person local feng shui. Do you ever do in-person readings for anyone, or?
I do, yeah. So actually, I'm heading to Minnesota after this. I'll be in Minnesota for about a month, mid-September to mid-October, and I'm going to be doing live events there. So
Oh,
I will
cool.
be doing some live readings in Minnesota during that time, and then also some live angel message circles while I'm there as well. And as far as other live events, so the interesting thing for me is I actually really feel that it's easier sometimes for me to connect when I'm not live with a person.
Oh,
So
interesting.
when so I typically do the readings over the phone. I have a conference line so I can record it for them. That's another thing that I do that is different than a lot of people don't record. And so everybody gets a recording of their reading, which they'll go back and listen to many, many times. There's energy work that happens. The angels are doing energy work on the person that I'm reading for as we're doing the reading. So they can go back and listen to the recording and also get
wow.
more energy work while they're
Yeah.
listening. So it's kind of a cool thing to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's great. Very cool. I would have thought the opposite. I would have thought that it would be easier in person. So that's really interesting how
Yeah, it is kind of funny, but I think for me, there's a lot of when you're in person with someone, there's a lot of outside distraction depending
Mm,
on where you're located, where you're
yeah.
doing it, what's going on for them energetically to be in their space. So I often feel if somebody's got like a pain in their back, for example, or stuck energy in a spot, I will feel that in my own body. So that's part of what happens for me when I'm doing a reading. I can feel energetically what's going on with them. And the nice thing for me is I'll feel it. I'll let them know that's what's going on. And I'll also let them know the angels are going to work on that. Like I don't
Oh,
have to
wow.
do that energy work. The angels will come in and do that energy work while I'm relaying messages to them. So they get kind of double dose. They get me and also energy work at the same time.
That is awesome. Oh my goodness, I love this stuff. Okay, so at the end, we're getting to the end here, which is a
Oh,
bummer.
it's gone so fast,
But
right?
I know, right? But at the end of every episode, I always ask, I don't know if you've seen one, but I always ask just a few random silly questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I
All
love
right.
it.
So the first one is, if you were given the opportunity to fly to space and walk on the moon, would you do it?
That is a funny question because my partner loves moon stuff, and
Oh, no kidding.
he would say yes in a minute. Uh, I probably would say no.
Yeah. I would say no
I
also.
I have trouble enough being grounded here on Earth I can't even imagine trying to ground my energy there when you can't even like touch the ground
Right?
really. It's that's a one thing that I really have to do a lot of work with. And that's actually one of the things to connect with your angels and guides. You have to be grounded. You have to be grounded in your physical body. And so I work really hard at being grounded here. So I don't think I'd want to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. All
Yeah.
right. So next, if you had the ability to have dinner with any one person, alive or dead, who would you choose?
Oh gosh. Wow. I actually, this is interesting. I know it seems like a question that somebody would have asked me in the past, but I had never really thought about it. But I think I actually I would have dinner with Mary Magdalene. Because she knew a lot about the workings of what was happening at that time, and she was a really powerful energy worker too. So I just would be really, yeah, I'd be really interested to sit down and
That's
and
funny.
talk with her.
My answer, somebody asked me that once, and my answer is Jesus.
I almost said that, but I just have a much stronger, I guess, maybe connection with Mary.
That's awesome. I love that answer. No one said that yet. And then last, I love to hear about I feel that your morning routine is so important, regardless of how early you get up, just how you start your day. So I'd love to hear how you start your day. What is the first thing you do in the morning?
First thing I do is meditate.
Yeah.
So always, yeah, I try to do that before I look. I don't always succeed at doing it before I look at my phone, but I usually try to do that first thing before I look at my phone, before I do anything else, before I even really get out of bed. I just will spend at least 10 to 15 minutes, sometimes 20 or 30, depending on what my day looks like, meditating.
And is that just to sort of clear your mind for a new day? Is that
Yes,
the
yeah,
purpose? Yeah.
because what tends to happen for us as humans is the minute we wake up, our mind starts running and it goes off on its own little tangents. And so for me, it just really helps to, number one, get me in my body, get me, breathing, focusing on clearing, whatever I might have like sort of floating around there. And it just really, really helps me. The other thing that I do, usually even before I do that, is there's a little phrase that I say, I don't remember where this came from. I've been saying it for years, so I can't give credit to whoever thought of it. But it's, I feel alive, awake, aware, and enthusiastic and joyful about my day. It's not exactly that, but and let's see, I feel alive, alert, awake, enthusiastic, and excited about this day. And now I'm not going to think of it. That's so funny because I do it like just wrote in the morning, but it's also about following the guidance. So I do the things spirit leads me and guides me to do today.
Right.
So that's the other piece of it, sort of setting up the day to like, yep, I'm going to follow the flow. I'm going to follow the guidance. I'm going to follow my intuition and my
I love
nudges.
that. I love that. Yeah. Meditating is something I've never done, and it's something that I'm thinking about starting. And I've always
Yeah,
said I should meditate in the morning, and just start the day right. So it's funny that you said that.
exactly. Insight
Yep.
Timer is great for that. So Insight Timer is a free app.
Okay.
And there's tons of different guided meditations, just music meditations on there, lots of different things that you can do with that. So that's a good one. But you can also do like a walking meditation. So that's also
Yeah.
good. Just don't bring your phone, don't have anything, and just pay attention to what's
Oh,
around you.
yeah. That's a great idea too. What did you say
Mhm.
the name of the app was?
It's called Insight Timer.
Insight Timer. Okay.
Hmm.
All right. Awesome. Very
Yeah.
good. All right. Well, Kim, this has been so great and so like just enlightening and
Aw.
informing and comforting. So thank you for sharing
Oh, you're so
all that you do with
welcome.
us.
You're
Yeah.
so
And
welcome.
yeah, we'll have to keep in touch and see what happens in the future for you.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Awesome. Thanks everybody for joining us on another episode of the Born or Made podcast. And we will see you next time.